Hello and welcome, I'm Dave. Today we're starting to learn Django, a Python web framework, and I'll provide links to all resources in the description below. I'll also provide a link for you to join my Discord server where you can discuss web development with other students and you can ask questions that I can answer and receive help from other viewers too. I look forward to seeing you there. Today we're starting to learn Django, a Python web framework, and I'm starting at djangoproject.com. This is the homepage for the Django project, and it has great documentation. I'll provide a link to this in the course repository. So what is Django? Well, on the web page it says Django makes it easier to build better websites or web apps more quickly and with less code. It is a web framework, and after you learn the framework, that is definitely true. A framework abstracts some things you would have to build otherwise, and so you can get started faster. But when you first learn a framework, it's a little more tedious because you have to learn how to use that framework, and that's what we'll do so in the future you can also build better web apps more quickly with Django. Let's scroll down just a little bit, and it says Meet Django. Here it says Django is a high-level Python web framework that encourages rapid development and clean, pragmatic design. It's built by experienced developers, so that will help us get started ridiculously fast with any project, as they say, because they've already mapped out a lot of this work for us. It's also secure, exceedingly scalable. It has lots of great features built in as well, and we'll get to some of those as we start learning Django. Now let's talk about prerequisites. If you haven't learned Python yet, that's a good place to start. This is not a Python for beginners course, but Django is a Python framework for the web. So you should probably learn some of the basics of Python before starting this Django course. And I do have a Python for beginners course on my YouTube channel. I'll be using Visual Studio Code as the code editor for this series, and you can get it at code.visualstudio.com if you don't have it, if you want to use it. Of course, you could use another code editor of your preference, but I will be using Visual Studio Code. Also, you're going to need Python, and so if you don't have that installed or just want to update the version you do have installed, you could download it and install it here from python.org. And you can see once we're here, there is a downloads page, and the current version is Python 3.12.1. I'm in VS Code now, and I've created a new folder. My folder is called Lesson 1. You could name yours whatever you want to as we start this series. And after you create a folder and open it in VS Code, go ahead and open a terminal window by pressing Control and the backtick. And now let's just verify the Python installation. Now I'm on Windows, so I'll type py. But if you are on Mac or Linux, you might be typing Python 3 to go ahead and execute Python. Either way, just so you know, I'm on Windows and I'll be typing py. Okay, after that, let's check our version by typing -- version. I'll press enter. You can see I have the latest as of the making of this video, Python 3.12.1. Now after this, we want to create a virtual environment. We're going to do that by typing Py or Python 3 if you need to on Mac or Linux, and then -m and then venv and then .venv. If you haven't seen this before, I do cover it in my Python for Beginners course. So after we've typed out this, let's go ahead and press enter. We should now see a folder over here in our file tree that is .venv. That would be our virtual environment, but we haven't started it yet. Now this is another difference between Mac and Linux. So not between Mac and Linux, pardon me, between Windows or Mac and Linux. So what I want to type on Windows is source space .venv/scripts/activate, and that would activate my virtual environment. But on Mac or Linux, instead of scripts, it is probably in bin/activate like that, just so you know the difference once again. So I'll type scripts/activate, press enter. This has now activated my virtual environment. So if I press enter again, you'll see the parentheses .venv here. So we know the virtual environment is activated. Now, anytime we want to deactivate that, we just type deactivate, if I could spell it correctly, deactivate, and press enter, and that would deactivate our virtual environment. But we're going to need it right now. As we install other things, we want to do that in the virtual environment for our project. So now let's install Django. Let's do that by typing py-m, then pip install, and then Django with a capital D. Press enter, and this should install Django in our project virtual environment. Okay, and after it's finished, we also have a message here that says we could update pip from 23.2.1 to 23.3.2. So let's go ahead and do that. You may have a different message if this is in the future, but I'll type py-m install and pip install, pip install. Now dash capital U is the same as 2 dashes and the word upgrade, so I'll just do that. And then pip once again, press enter. That should update, and I should now have 23.3.2, which would be the latest. Now with everything up to date, let's verify our Django installation. So I'm going to type py, and that opens up the REPL here for Python. So now that we're using Python, I can just type import Django, and after that I can type print, then Django.get_version, and then parentheses, and then close out with another parentheses, press enter, and yes, we have Django version 5.0.1 as of the making of this video. Now I want to go ahead and quit the Python REPL, so I'll type quit. I am having a hard time typing today. Quit with parentheses, and now we're out of the REPL. We're still in our virtual environment. If I press enter, you can still see the virtual environment here with the parentheses. So now let's create our project with Django since we have Django installed. So I'm going to type Django-admin, then start project. Then we need to name our project, and I'll just call it my project and press enter. This is going to create our Django project for us. And now we see a my project folder in the file tree. After that, let's go ahead and open it, and we see another folder inside with the same name. That can be a little bit confusing, but that's actually what should happen. We also see a manage.py file or .py. We will be using that to issue commands. We won't change anything in it, but we will use it. Now inside of this My Project folder, we see several other files as well, and we will be working with some of those today. But since we've now installed Django and created a project, we can start the server and make sure that is working. So let's go ahead and do that. Here in the terminal window, once again, let's type py. Well, we need to go into this directory first, and remember we have 2 of these. So we want to go into the top directory. Right now I'm in my lesson 01 folder, so I'm going to CD to go into the My Project folder. Now I'm inside of that top level My Project folder. From here, I want to type py, and then I'm going to type manage.py, and now I'll issue my command, which will be run server, and we can specify the port. The default port is 8000, but if I wanted it on 8001, I would just type the port number afterwards. But we could just let it go to the default, which will be 8000. So I'm going to press enter. It will start the server. Now we do have a message here about unapplied migrations, and you will probably see that too. We won't be doing that today, but just so you know, that's nothing wrong. It just means we haven't got there yet, and we will cover that. Right now the server is running, and we can see it's running at HTTP 127.0.0.1, which is the same as localhost. That means your computer, and then at port 8000. So let's go to the browser. We're back in the browser. Let's open a new tab, and after we do that, let's open up localhost, and let's go to 8000, press enter, and you should have the install worked successfully. Congratulations from Django with the little rocket here, just like I do. That's our server, and it's serving a default page, and it says you're seeing this page because debug equals true is in your settings file, and you have not configured any URLs yet, but we will be configuring our own URLs. This is just what you see from the initial installation. Now we're back in VS Code, and in the file tree, you should also notice that you now have a PyCache directory over here, and that's nothing to worry about. That just gets added, and also this db.sqlite3 file. Those were added since we've created our project and started the server. And nothing to worry about. Once again, we will eventually get to those. The PyCache actually just helps serve some things for our project faster, but it's nothing we need to be concerned about. Now let's stop our server. I'm going to click over here in the terminal and press Control-C, and that stops the server. From there, I want to go ahead and click on the URLs.py file that we have here inside of the My Project folder, and we'll scroll down to where we see the URL patterns here. So we have a list, and inside of it, we see one pattern already that has path with the admin/ and then admin.site.urls. We're going to add to this. Let's start by adding a path for the home page. And so this will start out with path. And now we'll just have an empty string here. So 2 single quotes and then a comma. Now we're not going to put the next half yet, but we will. We will create a view for that. But right now, let's just put a comma and move on to the next one. So I'll put another path, and I want to put in an about page route. So it will be about /, a lot like we see for the admin with the /. And I'll put a comma there as well. And then let's go ahead and put a comma afterwards also. So with that much there, let's go ahead and save the file. We will come back to this to finish it. But now we need to create a views file. So in the same directory here where we have our urls.py, let's create a new file. Let's name this views.py. Now inside of this, we're going to have an import. So we'll say from Django.http, we will import the HTTP response. Now, after we import that, we can create a function for our route. So we'll name this one homepage because it's going to our homepage. It's going to receive a request for the homepage. Now, this is a function, so then underneath we're indented. And here we're going to, let's not comment that out. We'll return and we'll have HTTP response. Now I'm going to respond with something very similar here, like hello world. That's kind of to be expected in a intro tutorial, right? After we say hello world, let's go ahead and add something else like I'm home. That works. So that's just a simple HTTP response to a request for the home page. And that's what we should see when we go to our home page once we hook all of this together. Let's put in another one for about. So we'll request the about page. Now these don't have to be named homepage or about, but it just kind of makes sense to match them up to what we are actually providing that is requested as well. So we'll link all of this together in the next page here in just a second. But right now we'll say def about for our function, and then I'm going to return once again an HTTP response. Now here I'm going to say my about page. Just keep it simple. So we have our 2 responses when we expect to get the home page or the about page requested. So now let's go back to the URLs page and we can link all of this together. And we're going to do that once again with an import. We need to import those views first. So I'll say from dot, which means the folder that we are in, will then import views that we just created. Now that we have those views imported, we can use those with the paths here. So I'm going to say views.homepage, and that links to that homepage function that we created right here. Now after that, let's go to the about, and here I'm going to say views.about. And so now we've linked those functions to our routes here in our URL patterns. So when we get a request for the homepage, it will call that function for the home page. And when we get a request for the about page, it will call that function for the about page. So now let's once again open a terminal window with control in the backtick. And from here, let's start our server. I'll arrow up so we can see the same command. It's py. Then we call the manage.py file that we have over here. And then we call the command from it, run server. And again, you could choose a different port by specifying it like 8001. I'll once again go to the default, which is 8000. So after I enter this, we once again see this warning that you can ignore about migrating. And then it says it's running at port 8000. And again, that's at localhost. Let's go to our browser and check this out. Now currently, we still have the page that we saw before, so we need to refresh this to see the new page. Refresh, and we get a very small hello world, I'm home. I can zoom this in. It's a lot bigger here. I'm at 500% now, and you can read that very well. Let's go ahead and check out the about page while we're here. So 8000/about, press enter, and we get my about page. Now these are pretty boring and I really had to zoom them in, so we want to go ahead and do more than just send a couple of text messages like we currently did with the HTTP response. Let's create some HTML templates and make this look just a little bit better for our first lesson. Okay, back in VS Code, we need to create a templates directory now so we can have some HTML templates instead of just sending text. So what I want to do is go to the file tree. I'm going to click the manage.py file just so I know I'm on that same level. And here I'm going to click a new directory icon, and now I'll type templates. So if we close this inner my project directory, we should see templates directly underneath that. Now here I want to create a couple of HTML files. I'm going to create home.html, and here I'll type an exclamation mark, which is an Emmet shortcut, and I'll press tab. That gives me a quick skeleton of an HTML page, and that's all I need right now. I'm going to switch the name document in the title home. Inside of the body, I'm going to put an H1 and put the word home in there as well. Then I'm going to have a paragraph that says, check out my about page. But I'm going to change the word about here to a hyperlink. So I need the anchor tag with an href. Inside of here, I'll put a slash and then about. Close that out and put the word about. So that links to our about page. Control S to save that file. Now Control A to select everything in the file, Control C to copy everything. Now I'm going to just create another new HTML file here, call it about.html, and I'm going to Control V to paste all of that in. I'll double click home, and then I'm going to press Control D to select the next instance of home. I'm going to change that word to about. Now in the link here in our anchor tag, the word about needs to be deleted because we're just going to go to the slash, which is our root or home page, if you will. Then we'll change the word about to home, so it says check out my home page. Control S to save that file, and we're finished with the HTML files. Now let's open the second My Project folder. Look inside of here to the settings.py file. We need to scroll down. If you start at the top here, to scroll all the way down to where it says templates. Then inside of this list for templates, we need to go to where it says DIRs, in all caps, stands for directory. This is us telling Django where our templates are. So we put in single quotes. I'm going to type the word templates here that refers to our templates directory. Control S to save that change, and that's the only change we need for the settings.py file right now. After that, let's go back to the views.py file. Now I'm going to comment out some of the code here. I want to leave it in here because we used it earlier in the tutorial, and others may of course download the code and need to see these lines as well. So I'm just going to use the hashtag to comment out that import and both return lines here. We're going to change these, but I want to leave this in just to refer to earlier in the tutorial. So now the import we need starts with from, then we'll have Django.shortcuts. After that, we'll say import render. And then we're going to return render on each of these lines. So I'll start a new line here, and I didn't need that quote either. Let's come down, return render. The first thing we pass into render is the request. After the request, we're going to render our HTML template. So here I'll say home.html. We don't need to do anything else. Django now knows where this template is because we linked it in the settings. I'm going to copy this line for the return render, Control C, come down here into our about function, paste it, once again change home to about. So now I'm referring to that about template. Go ahead and Control S to save this. Let's open a terminal once again with Control and the backtick. I still have it running right now, but just to make sure, let's Control C to quit, and then let's go ahead and restart it with py, manage.py, run server. I'll press enter. Now we know it's restarted, and let's bring the browser up to see if we can see our changes. Right now we still have the old page here that says my about page. We can hit back. We still have the old hello world, I'm home, but let's refresh and see if we get the changes. Yes, we do. So we now have an H1 check out my About page, and it looks like it links to the About page. Let's click that. It does. We're now on the About page, and it has a link to the home page. So our HTML templates are working as expected. Back in VS Code, let's go ahead and Control-C to stop the server, close the terminal, and now we want to create a static folder for some CSS and JavaScript, some static assets for our project. So to do that, we want it on the same level as this templates directory. To make sure you're on that same level, you could click the manage.py file here in the file tree if you want to. From there, I'm going to click New Folder once again. Here, I'm going to call this folder Static because they are static assets that will go inside. Then I'm going to create a new directory inside of Static. I'm going to call it CSS. Now, inside of CSS, I'll create a file, call this style.css. Now, I hope you're familiar with CSS. If you're not, I do have a CSS course on my YouTube channel as well. Here, I'm going to start with a simple reset. We're not going to add a lot of styles here, but I'll reset as I usually do. So margin and padding, both at 0. After that, box sizing to border box. That is my simple reset. After that, let's make a change to the body so we definitely know the CSS is taking hold. We'll do a min height here of 100 VH. After that, let's set the display to grid, and then we're going to place content center, so everything will be in the center of the page. Set the font size to 3 rem, so it's big but not too big. Background color, let's switch these around, so let's go with black, and then let's set the color, the text, to white smoke. After that, we'll just change our H1 and paragraph just a little bit, so both of those, and let's say text align is going to be center. That's all the CSS we need, and we can apply this to both of our HTML templates. And to do that, we need to go to the settings.py file again, that is inside of that second My Project folder. At the very top of the file, we need to add one import, and that is import OS. After we make that import, we'll scroll down to almost the bottom of the file now. We can see we have a static URL here, but we need to add something underneath this. So here in all caps, we'll say static files underscore dirs. From there, we'll put in an equals and we'll create a list. Now let's refer to that import. So os.path.join. Then inside of here, we'll refer to the base directory that's already defined above in this file for us. And then we'll say static, and this is referring to the static directory that we created over here. So we're telling Django where this folder is for our static assets. So let's go ahead and Control S to save those changes again to the settings file. And now we need to go back to our HTML templates and add our style sheet in, and we can do that with the Django templating engine. It's very cool how it works. So I'll show you in the home page. And we'll go right underneath the doc type definition here, and let's put in a curly brace and then a %, say load, and then space static, another space, and another %, and then the closing curly brace. So we have loaded in static asset now, and now we can use that, and we're going to use that when we link to the CSS, and that is a link element. I can scroll down or arrow down here and say link CSS. I get some auto completion. It says it's a style sheet. It's already linking to style.css, but that's not what I want to do here in Django. I need to link specifically to the file that I have told Django that we have. And so I'm going to use that templating engine, again, a curly bracket, opening and closing, and then a %, and then the word static. And then in single quotes here, I'll say CSS/style.css. So now I've used the templating engine, but I need to put in that closing % as well. So this is what it looks like when we're using the templating engine. We're starting with these curly brackets and of course having the % as well. This should link our style sheet to this page. So let's check this out. We'll need to again open the terminal, start the server. After we start the server, let's go back, take a look at our home page. Let's refresh and see if the changes apply. Yes, they do. So we have the big home and it says check out my about page. We haven't applied the CSS to the about page yet. So when we go there, it still is without those styles. So I'm going to apply that in the GitHub repository for this lesson, but I'll leave this one for you to apply because it's just the same thing we did to the home page. And once again, back in VS Code, let's link some JavaScript as well so you can see it works the same way. I'm going to click on the static directory. I'm going to click to create a new directory, make this one JS. Now inside of the JS directory, I'll create a new file and this will just be main.js. Inside of here, I'll just put a console.log and say, this is JS from your about page. And we should see this message in the console if we link the JavaScript correctly to the about page. So now in the about.html, and this is where you're going to link the style sheet, and you can check my repository to see if you did it the same way that I did. But now we need to link the JavaScript as well. So again, at the top, which you would need for the CSS anyway, we're going to start with load static, and we're using that templating engine, so we have the curly brackets and the percentages. Now after the title here, I'm going to put a script tag. So I typed script, and I'm just going to choose the source here from the list so we could specify a source. This is where we'll use that templating engine. But I also want to point out we should put defer right here as an extra attribute for the script tag. So this will wait until all of the page is loaded and then it loads the script, is what defer essentially does. Now here we'll put in the curly bracket, %, say static, just like we did before, and now our link. So js/main.js. Again, the closing % there as well. So let's save this change. I left the server running. Let's see if it applies our changes when we go back to about, reload the page. Now I'll press Control, Shift, and the letter I to open up our dev tools over here and see the console, and we have our console message. This is JS from your about page. Remember to keep striving for progress over perfection, and a little progress every day will go a very long way. Please give this video a like if it's helped you, and thank you for watching and subscribing. You're helping my channel grow. Have a great day, and let's write more code together very soon.